All right, hello there YouTube. We have a quick one today. With the Seraphon being everywhere and also being rather nice models, I must say, like literally one of the best sets of models they have done in years, there is definitely an excuse for some more weathered and aged metals on the Seraphon. I think they look a little bit weird with extremely clean metals. You know, they're kind of made to feel ancient and tribal, and I don't imagine those guys having pristine gear. This tutorial is going to be, in theory, a one take. Even if we speed it up, I'll be doing it all in one go. I might use the hairdryer, but yeah, I'll be doing it in one go. It's a quick one on how to just do metallics in an interesting, fast and fun way and get a little bit of extra age into the equation. So let's have a little look at this. I have a very bright silver, this one, and a black on my palette. My model's been primed black. I would go from black for this. Very often I choose to go from another color, but black is absolutely fine. And in fact, silver goes down really, really well over black. Quite a lot of people don't know that. Black is the best undercoat if you want your silver to look super silvery. So the first step is going to be, I'm just going to darken my silver, not by using another silver, but by adding black to it. This is kind of my default for metallics. And the reason is that you get a really high contrast, not contrast in the Games Workshop, Citadel contrast sense, but contrast as in light versus dark. You get a really high contrast between what is in the recesses that literally isn't shiny, it's, you know, it's black, and what is on the raised areas, which is black and is shiny. And if you just use a darker metallic, they're darker, but still just as shiny. Hopefully that makes sense. So what I try to do is build up from a really, really dark base, and then hopefully we should get a really nice contrast as we get up towards the highlights, and things will literally become more and more shiny as a percentage. So our first coat's down. Very, very, very dark, but it's gone pretty heavily. You know, it's basically got everywhere. Now what we're going to do is we're going to jump right to, I've cleaned my brush a bit, but you know, not super thoroughly. So there is some black still in there. Not sure if this shows up, but it's not a pure version of the silver at all. It's a very, very strong silver, but we've got a darker version of it because of contamination that we're kind of using on purpose. However, it is a big step up. And with this one, we're just going to try and hit the edges. Be patient here. If it looks like it's not affecting your model, just carry on doing what you're doing and do it for like 3 times longer than you think you should. And you would be surprised at the kind of subtle build-up that you can get. Obviously, it'll stick to edges more easily than anywhere else. That's what we're going for though. We want the bits that stick out the most to be the shiniest. So straight away, this is already quite cool. Rather than just doing a flat layer of metallics, we've got a massive, let me get a pointer, we've got a massive amount of variation between what's in the recesses and what's on the very edges, or if you look at that ball, you know, the bits that are sticking out the most. We might lose a little bit of subtlety on areas like this because details are just too close together. You can always dot washes in the middle there if you want to darken that. So I'm going to repeat the previous step, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it all around my brush, make sure it's on there from all aspects. I've used the dampening pad already, test on my knuckle. So I've not removed quite as much this time. I'm going to very carefully, I don't have a particular aspect in mind for this piece, and what I mean by that is I'm not imagining light coming from a particular direction, or I haven't so far, so I can just do kind of global highlights, and by that I mean I'm just going to do little circles all the way around my model. So hopefully this is showing well on camera. This already looks great. This is really, really good. You could absolutely stop there, that would be fine. You've built it up. But what we're going to do is involve a little bit of color to get some extra interest on this piece. It's got such wonderful shapes. I want to exaggerate them and make the most out of them. So you can use anything for this. If you are using contrast paints or shades, make sure to not use them too thick. I'll show you what I mean by that. So you can tint it in any direction you want. You can use greens, you can use purples. I'm imagining this shield or whatever is ancient, so that kind of gives me license to do whatever I like with it, really. This is only slightly diluted skeleton horde. I said, if you are using the shades, this is a contrast actually, but basically there's a shade, behaves like one. Use them thin. So I'm going to get a thin glaze all over this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the piece at this orientation. I'm not going to mess with it. It shouldn't be running anywhere. But I don't want it to change direction. If it starts running one way and then another, that's where we get a nasty smear. Once I'm done, the most important step, we do a little pass and make sure that nowhere there's too much. And actually, if you wanted to remove it because you wanted some bits to be shiny than others, this is when you could do that too. So I could keep that detail kind of extra shiny by just removing it from it. Do the edges. You can mess with it until it starts drying, then you have to stop. Okay, you can let this dry. If you're doing a squad, you can let it dry naturally. I'm gonna hair dry it. So we use a wash for that. I wanna show you something. You can use a strong contrast. I got Darko Flesh here. It's a very strong contrast. I'm gonna take a dot, a little dot. Test it over silver here. There we go. I've just got some water in my brush from washing it out. You can do exactly the same thing. Now, the bonus of doing something that is majority water is it'll all evaporate easily, and it's not gonna risk obscuring detail like a shade would with their kind of viscous finish. I'm getting to the stage where I should probably put this on a holder, but I don't like using them when I'm dry brushing because I knock things off. Okay, so that'll dry faster because it's not made of medium, it's just got water in there. And like I said, you run the risk of obscuring your details a lot less. By obscuring details, what I mean is I drew this diagram on our recent how to base coat video. If this is a detail on the model, when you put your wash on, water will do this. What a wash will do is it'll kind of do this, especially if it's thick. And then you delete this detail. And when you try and dry brush this nice sharp edge here, you'll just have a blobby, soft, you know, kind of a much more organic shape where they've put in a really hard edge to make our painting higher quality. So I'm just gonna repeat what was our last stage of the dry brushing. Use the dampening pad, prepare the brush. This is super bright, so we're gonna be pretty careful with it. Again, test on the knuckle, having already tested on the pad. Looks like we're good. And then this time round, I'm actually gonna do it from the top down. So I'm gonna imagine that it's being lit by the sun. Now we've got something that looks ancient. Go and Google some old Bronze Age shields or something like that, or Verdigris, it looks great. So on the subject of Verdigris, I've grabbed a 00S. We're going straight in for some control. And I'm just gonna use two paints here. I've got Ghostbuster green and I've got Sotek green. I'll tell you what, actually, I'm gonna put some scratches down first. And for this, I will probably use a holder, very high budget one. So taking some of our pure silver. This is hard, getting lines this thin, so what we're going to do is going to spend lots of time preparing our brush, and then we'll test right next to our miniature before we go to our miniature. I want to have only the very tip of my brush making scratches. I want my paint leaving easily, but not too heavily. Concentrate things on the edges. And if you want, you can put a little edge highlight on while you're here. Even though we've dry brushed it, there's no harm kind of doubling down. If we're careful, we can use the side of our brush. Okay. I think I'm going to put a couple more scratches, then call it there. Scratches is like eyes or any other battle damage for me. I'm not aiming to get it perfect because I'm not really that good at it. It's not one of my strengths. So I aim to just get it solid and then stop messing with it because I'll probably screw it up. Hopefully we're not at that point already. Okay, so they made a real difference. There's a lot of visual interest going on now. I'm actually going to just exaggerate quickly our recesses because it might make it easier to make the verdigris stand out. So just taking a little bit of our black, going to mix with the skeleton horde we've got on the palette still and a bit of water. Then what we're going to do is we're going to push this into the recesses, whichever ones you like. Ideally with more control than that. I don't often use small brushes, but you could not be using a big brush for a task like this. It'll just make your life too hard. It'll literally fit in the majority of the areas that we need it to perfectly. I wouldn't go smaller than this for this. It's not like smaller equals better. 00 is about as far as I go for details of this size. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push to these corners. And then just around the details of the shield. I'm ending my strokes where it's the most recessed, kind of starting a bit further away and then pushing towards it, using the side of the brush. Now, if you're in more of a rush, you could absolutely do this with a black wash. Wouldn't be quite as neat, but it would work pretty well. Non-oil is a bit more subtle than using a black paint, so you don't really have to worry about mistakes. You just won't get quite the kind of, high degree of contrast that we've got here. If you want to use techniques like this just for, your leader or people who are standing at the front of a unit, your command or something like that, it's entirely up to you. But it will make a difference and the shield will look great by the time we're finished. Okay, kind of happy with that. Final step is the lower part of the shield. I'm just going to make comparatively darker. Well, I'm confident that I've got a little bit of shadowing potential on the brush. There we go. Okay, fun time. Straight in with Sotek Green. Now what we want to do is we're going to be fairly blobby with this until the last steps, when we're going to put down some kind of dots within it. And what that's going to do is it's going to make things a little bit more forgiving. So we're going to aim to get it roughly in the right area at the right consistency. If it's not perfect though, it really doesn't matter. Now, even though I'm thinking of my lighting with an orientation, I'm not thinking of this with an orientation. Like, this shield does not spend all of its life like that. I guess it might do on a wall or something, but I'm just trying to imagine what is the most recessed, the most out of the way. And those are the bits that I'm going to add the verdigris to. Bits where it wouldn't have got rubbed off, basically. Of course, having made these areas darker, with us now putting quite a light colour on, the light colour should stand out more as a result. It's quite easy to just blob any mistakes off with your finger. And again, if you're doing this mega quick, you could just mix up a wash. Let me show you a quick and sloppy application down below. There we go. And it probably will end up barely, barely inferior to our careful application. Don't forget the details on the rim. We do want them to be dark enough. It's quite easy to water down too much and then you don't leave yourself enough space for the next step. It'll just stand out and look too stark. You need the turquoise base before we get up to that kind of minty green that'll be the next colour. Pretty much done. Make sure that you interrupt your strokes at some point. So if we've got a big line down here, there should be a break in it. It'll just help things look a bit more organic. And if it's not quite subtle enough, don't worry, the next step will kind of pull attention away from it. You're trying to recreate nature here, so hop around a bit, don't be too consistent. Your eye will recognize any patterns that you accidentally put down pretty easily. Cool. Ghostbuster green. This will be a highlight color, and as an intermediary, we're just going to mix some of it in. Okay, so we don't want to land in any new areas with this. This wants to land inside the areas we just put down. Again, broken up is fine, and you can break it up more than the previous step. So hopefully you'll notice you don't particularly need a huge amount of control. It's just not particularly a problem here. You're trying to show something that's random in nature, so it doesn't matter if your strokes aren't perfect. I'll just try washing it down and kind of blobbing it in our random section. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if the random section ended up better than the controlled one? Probably is going to happen like that, isn't it? So it normally is. Okay, that's that step done. Pure Ghostbuster now. So this is the step where you do want to kind of exhibit a little bit of control. So my paint's not very dilute. I'm going to put a tiny bit of the blue in there. Still a lot lighter though than our previous step. And you want this to land inside, and little dots is what we're going for with this. Little areas where it's happened more strongly. You need it to be strong, otherwise it just won't stand out enough. This is the last steps, and you really want to draw attention to it. You don't want it to look like wet blobs. That's why we're kind of poking it in. The first steps absolutely can This kind of does the deception after them. I think that's almost it. Oh, forgot key detail. There we go. So I've not done any streaks or anything because we haven't really pretended it's got an orientation. So yeah, that's it. A really, really good way just to add some age to your stuff. You can reduce steps out of this very, very easily as well. And if you're doing it on a large scale, it's pretty forgiving. If you take these further away, you can see the impact all about those color differences and the fact that our metal isn't like just a clean classic silver. So whatever you want to stain it with, whether it's something strong like snakebite leather, or you want to use something a bit more reddy, even colors like croak, it's croak green. Croak green will work really, really, really well, and the purple I've been using is Magos purple. If ever in doubt and you want a base, just start out with sepia. It's really, really soft, Griffin sepia, and you can add anything you want into that. It's got quite good behavior. As long as you don't let it go down too thick, you should be fine. All right, there you go. Any particular other questions about metallics or aged metals, do let us know. We've got a little bit of time to put into making a metallic video. I do want to do one on golds in general, but it's going to be a big one. So any questions you have for little tips, fire away, pop them in the comments down below.